They thought they knew who she was the moment she walked in, but they didn't ask a single question before making up their minds. What would you do if people looked at you and only saw a stereotype? Let us know in the comments section below. The heels clicked first. Not the soft, hesitant taps of someone trying to blend in. No, they struck the marble floors of the Westmere estate like a countdown. Confident, clean, calculated, Sabrina Parks moved through the grand foyer of the $14,800,000 0 cents property with the poise of someone who wasn't just familiar with this level of luxury, but who had curated it. She didn't glance up at the chandelier, didn't run her fingers along the crown molding, didn't pause at the brass-gilded stairway that curled into the sky like a question mark. She had seen all this before, and more. But Riley Benson hadn't. Not really. He was on his third house tour that day, and it showed. His tie was loosened just enough to suggest effort, but his smile had grown mechanical. Riley turned just as Sabrina stepped in, immediately assuming the guest he'd been waiting for was still minutes away. He looked at her, jeans, navy blazer, textured curls tucked neatly back, and gave her a nod without a second thought. "Cleaning crews through the back, past the guest kitchen," he said flatly, waving a dismissive hand toward the back hallway. Sabrina didn't blink. She just stood there, still as poured stone, and smiled. One corner of her mouth lifted, not in offense, but amusement. Riley had already turned away. She gave it 10 seconds, long enough to feel the assumptions settled in the room like smoke. Then, calm as ever, she said, "I'm actually here for the open house." Riley turned around again, slower this time. His expression flickered, confusion first, then a nervous grin that tried to patch the moment. He looked her over once more, but this time with the scrutiny of someone reevaluating what he thought he knew. "You're here for the tour," he repeated, suddenly affable. "Of course. My mistake." He smoothed his shirt and stepped forward. "I'm Riley, lead agent on this listing. Can I offer you a brochure?" She took the glossy folder without looking at it. "Sure." From the corner of the room, an older couple whispered as Sabrina passed. "Thought she was the staff," the woman murmured under her breath, just loud enough for it not to be an accident. Her husband chuckled dryly. Sabrina's ears caught it, but her eyes didn't flinch. She walked past them and straight toward the view. This was the part of the home that would seduce most people. 40-foot floor-to-ceiling windows revealing rolling hills, a private vineyard, and a pool that shimmered like a glass coin. But Sabrina was looking past it all. She was searching for something else. Her phone buzzed. A soft vibration in her blazer pocket. She didn't need to check. It was Trey, again, probably texting to ask if she was still planning to speak to that young agent he'd been mentoring. "You need to meet her," he'd said. "She's got that same fire you used to have." "Used to?" She burning. Just quieter now. Riley gestured broadly as he spoke, trying to recapture control of the moment. "This property just hit the market 4 days ago," he said, voice lifted for the small group gathering behind them. "We're expecting offers north of 16 mil, though. It's that kind of listing." A tall man in a Tom Ford jacket nodded, arms crossed. "Square footage?" "Just under 11,000. 6 bedrooms, 10 baths, plus a detached guest villa." Riley continued his pitch, now fully on autopilot, glancing at Sabrina occasionally like he wasn't sure where to place her. She didn't ask questions, didn't take photos, didn't even walk the full perimeter of the space like the others did. She just listened. The kind of listening that made people uncomfortable. Like she was hearing things they didn't know they were saying. In a room where everyone else was trying to prove they belonged, Sabrina just was. It was when they reached the main hallway, lined with imported stone and lit with subtle LED strips, that Riley made another misstep. "If you're with catering or staging," he said, pulling her slightly aside. I just want to make sure you're not missing your crew." Sabrina turned toward him fully this time. "I'm not with either," she said. No smile this time, just a slow blink, like she was giving him a second to catch up. There was a pause, and then Riley laughed, as if trying to melt the awkwardness with charm. "Right. Just making sure. You know, we've had so many vendors coming through this week, hard to keep track." He looked around to see if anyone was watching. They weren't. They were listening, because it had gotten quiet. Too quiet for an open house in the hills. Sabrina pulled out a leather folder from her bag, sleek, understated, the kind of object you don't notice until it's already in your hand. She opened it, revealing a single sheet, then handed it to Riley. "Do you say?" He took it, looked down. His eyes darted back up. "This life is a cash offer." "Correct. But no contingencies, no lender, no delays." She paused, then added with a small tilt of her head, "Unless the current owner would prefer to wait for something less certain." Riley's mouth opened, closed. She stepped past him, back into the sunlight slicing through the living room. The crowd parted without realizing they had. People watched her now, not because of the assumption, but because she had shattered it. Casually, completely, and without a single raised voice. She made it to the glass balcony, looked out at the land, like she was seeing something no one else could. That's because she was. She was seeing her future. Not just the house, but what it meant to stand here and not just belong, but own. This wasn't even the end. It was barely the beginning. Riley still hadn't moved. He stood in the middle of the grand room holding Sabrina's offer letter like it was laced with explosives. His fingers hovered around its edges, not daring to wrinkle it. A bead of sweat traced along the back of his neck, even though the air conditioning was humming at a perfect 72 degrees. He looked around the room, then back to the letter. Full cash, no questions, no stalling. Her name stamped at the bottom like a gavel drop. Sabrina, on the other hand, had already made herself comfortable in a leather armchair near the bar. She crossed one leg over the other, calm as a sunrise. The silence in the room stretched thinner than glass. People glanced from her to Riley, from Riley to the paper, and back to her again. The couple that had whispered earlier now stared in quiet disbelief, as if watching a magician rip up a card only to pull it from behind their ear. "Ms. Parks," Riley finally managed, voice uneven. "Would you like to, walk through the rest of the property?" "No," she replied without looking up. "I've already seen enough." "Of course, yes, absolutely." He stammered forward, trying to pivot. "Would you like some champagne while I call the listing owner?" She turned her head slowly toward him, not unkindly, but not giving him a way out either. "You can bring it here." Riley disappeared faster than dignity in a scandal. The remaining guests didn't leave, but they stopped moving. Every step now felt like tiptoeing around a tectonic plate. One woman in pearls glanced at the paper Riley had abandoned on a side table before Sabrina's chair. Her eyes scanned the top line and widened at the name, Sabrina Parks, Real Estate Group, LLC. Whispered something. He blinked. "You gotta be kidding." She wasn't. 10 minutes later, Riley returned, champagne flute in hand, his smile tense as fishing line. "Here you go," he said, handing her the glass like it was an apology in crystal form. "I've contacted the owners. They're thrilled, obviously." "Obviously," Sabrina echoed, raising her glass with a polite nod. Across the room, someone else had pulled out their phone. Not to text, to film. Sabrina caught it in her peripheral vision and said nothing. She didn't have to. By the time that clip made its way online, the world would know exactly what happened in that room. But none of these people knew where she came from. Not really. They didn't know about that one-bedroom apartment in South Haven with the peeling linoleum where she'd grown up watching her mom come home from the late shift, too tired to speak. They didn't know about the night she skipped prom to take her GED because she dropped out to work full-time when her stepdad got locked up, or about the first time she saw a foreclosed home, boarded up windows and all, and thought, I could fix that. No one in that open house knew about her first property, a rundown duplex she bought at 21, flipped by 22, and used to fund her next 3 investments. They didn't know about the rejections, the "we'll call you back" that never came, the way loan officers talked slower when they saw her face on Zoom. They had never seen her portfolio, the dozens of homes she'd sold, rented, renovated, or the network she built from scratch, without a mentor, without investors, without an ounce of inherited trust. They didn't see the late nights, the 3 phones she juggled, the notes scribbled on fast food napkins while waiting on drywall quotes. They only saw the blazer, the curls, the skin, and they drew their own story before she had a chance to breathe. Until now, Briley stood nearby, pretending to check messages, pretending not to notice how many people were now trying to figure out who Sabrina Parks was. He finally cleared his throat. "Miss Parks, if I may, we'd love to feature you as a preferred buyer for upcoming listings in the area. I have several properties coming to market soon. Off-market options, too." She raised an eyebrow. "You'd like to work with me now?" His face flushed. "Well, yes. I think it could be mutually beneficial. You clearly know this industry." She stared at him for a beat, then smiled, slow and sharp. "I own a brokerage, Mr. Benson. I don't need an agent. I hire them." A quiet ripple ran through the crowd. Riley blinked, speechless. But, she continued, "if you're ever in need of a listing partner who doesn't insult their clients before checking the sign-in sheet, I might let one of my associates reach out." Riley's face crumpled into a polite mask. "Understood." At that moment, a young woman approached. Early 20s, curly bob, wide eyes. She was holding a clipboard awkwardly, one of the hosting assistants. Sabrina noticed the hesitation in her step, the way she adjusted her posture as she neared. "Hi, Miss Parks?" she said, quiet. Sabrina turned, and her expression softened. "Yes?" "I just wanted to say, I followed your work. I saw you speak at the NWIC Summit last year. You changed the way I looked at this industry." The words came out fast, like she wasn't sure she'd have the courage to finish them. Sabrina smiled for real this time. "What's your name?" Maya Jennings. "I'm just interning for the summer with one of the listing partners here, but I want to get my license next spring." "Good," Sabrina said. "Don't wait for anyone to open the door for you. Kick it in. And when you do, make sure you reach back and hold it open for the next girl." Maya lit up, nodding. "Yes, ma'am." Riley stood stiff beside them, suddenly irrelevant. Sabrina finished her champagne and handed the glass to him without a word. Then, to Maya, "Come walk with me." And the two of them walked back through the same marble foyer, down the same brass staircase, past the same people, who now looked at her with awe instead of dismissal. But nothing had changed. They had just been wrong the whole time, about everything. And Sabrina Parks had known it all along. The glass door slid shut behind her with a soft hiss. Sabrina and Maya stepped into the sunlight together, the clamor of whispers and sideways glances echoing behind them like a memory already losing color. The stone path beneath their feet led to a small circular driveway where Sabrina's matte-backed Range Rover gleamed like a silent witness. She handed Maya the signed copy of the purchase offer, folded crisply between 2 documents. "Put this somewhere safe. Never let your name be the quietest thing on the page." Maya nodded, gripping it tight. Her hands were shaking, not from fear but from the sudden shift in her world. She wasn't just walking alongside a role model anymore. She was walking with someone who had just turned a power imbalance into a masterclass. They reached the car. Sabrina opened the passenger door, gesturing. "Get in." "Are we going somewhere?" Maya asked, nerves rising. "We're not staying here," Sabrina replied, stepping around to the driver's side. "You're not going to learn anything useful from watching rich people pretend they're smarter than the market." Maya scrambled in. The leather seat was still warm from the sun. The SUV purred to life and pulled away from the estate like it was never part of it. The house shrank in the rearview mirror, its glass and stone facade already starting to feel like someone else's illusion. 10 minutes later, they pulled into a modest neighborhood lined with palm trees and chain-link fences. No sweeping driveways here, no imported landscaping, just homes that stood like survivors. Worn, weathered, but proud. Sabrina parked in front of a beige duplex with faded blue trim. "This was mine," she said. "First one I ever flipped." Maya blinked at the building. It wasn't flashy. There wasn't even a front lawn, just gravel and a crooked mailbox. "Got it for $56,000, Sabrina continued. "Tore out the floors, replaced all the pipes, painted it myself, and slept on the living room floor for 3 months. Sold it the following year for $122. That margin funded my next 3 projects." She stepped out of the car and waited for Maya to follow. Inside, the space smelled faintly of pine cleaner and paint. Whoever owned it now had kept it simple, clean. Sabrina stood in the center of what used to be her kitchen and closed her eyes for a second. "You can't forget where you start, not even for a second," she said, "because this," she tapped the tile with the tip of her heel, "is what teaches you the rules." Maya looked around. "What rules?" Sabrina tilted her head, then walked back toward the door. "Come on. I'll show you." They drove again, this time heading toward the city. Past the condos, past the places Maya had only ever seen in magazine ads. They stopped at a tiny brick building sandwiched between a laundromat and a pawn shop. Faded lettering above the door read, "East View Title and Escrow." "This is where I closed my first deal." "The agent who helped me?" "Hispanic woman named Gloria. She told me flat out, nobody's going to hand you anything. But if you read faster, talk clearer, and ask better questions, they won't be able to stop you." They stepped inside. The front desk hadn't changed. Same potted plant, same bowl of cheap peppermints. A man in his late 50s looked up from the counter. "Sabrina?" She smiled. "Hey, Todd." He stood. "You're back." "It's been a minute." "Net showing someone the trail?" she said, motioning to Maya. Todd gave her a nod that said more than words ever could. Respect built over years, trust earned through deals, not dinner parties. Back in the car, Maya finally spoke. "You don't just flip houses, do you?" Sabrina laughed softly. "That's the smallest part of it. People like Riley, they think this is about granite countertops and square footage. But real estate is about leverage, ownership. It's the only way to sit at tables where people actually listen." They pulled into a small plaza next, not a fancy brokerage, but a clean, sharp office with a logo on the door, Parks Group. Inside, the space was alive. Phones ringing, soft jazz playing, 2 black women at desks typing quickly, 1 man on a headset pacing with purpose. Sabrina nodded to them as she passed, leading Maya to a glass-walled office in the back. "This is where the real work happens," she said. "This is where we build what they said we'd." Maya looked around, her eyes wide. "This is yours?" "All of it." She walked to a shelf on the wall and pulled down a framed photo. A young girl with 2 afro puffs sat on a stoop next to an older woman with sharp eyes and a gold tooth that caught the sun. "My grandma Loretta," Sabrina said. "She used to clean houses for a living. Raised me on tips and pride. She'd say, 'Don't worry if they see you scrub floors. Worry if they never see your name on a deed.'" Maya swallowed. She'd be proud. I hope so. Sabrina sat behind a desk and leaned back. You're going to get tested, Maya. Not once. Not twice. Constantly. You'll get mistaken for the help, for the assistant, for the girl who showed up early to sweep up the brochures. You'll hear them mispronounce your name even when it's on your business card. They'll watch you like a hawk in rooms they fly blind through. She let the words hang in the air like incense. But you're going to walk in anyway. You're going to own your presence before you own a single square foot. Maya's throat tightened. She didn't expect to feel emotional, but something about hearing it said plain, real, like someone had taken the thoughts out of her own head and given them back in power. I don't know how to do it yet, Maya said quietly. You will, Sabrina replied, but you have to be twice as prepared and 10 times as unbothered. A knock on the glass interrupted them, and one of Sabrina's team leaned in. We've got an interview scheduled. That young agent from Atlanta just walked in. Sabrina nodded. Let's make her wait. 10 minutes. The woman grinned and walked away. Maya tilted her head. Is that part of the strategy? Sabrina smiled, eyes gleaming. That's part of the game. She didn't just buy the house, she changed the game. 3 weeks later, Sabrina stood barefoot in the center of the mansion she now owned. The air smelled like dust and lemon oil. The former owners had packed up in a hurry, leaving behind a few odd artifacts, a crystal vase, a chess set missing its queen, and a wine cellar half full of bottles older than Sabrina herself. She had already decided to keep the chessboard. It felt poetic. She moved through the house with quiet authority, her fingers grazing the banister of the winding staircase. Maya followed behind, clipboard in hand, phone recording every step. The light was perfect. Golden hour, slipping through the windows in soft ribbons, catching the curves of the crown molding, like it knew it was on camera. This is where I want the round table, Sabrina said, gesturing to the sunroom. 12 seats, no head of the table. Power distributed, Maya replied, jotting it down. Got it. They walked past the pool into the outdoor garden. Sabrina paused beneath the archway of climbing roses, the scent of new beginnings heavy in the air. This place isn't just a house, she said. It's a message. Increase energy to aid, to permit sleep. Sabrina smiled. To everyone who ever told me, not yet, not for you, or you should be grateful just to be here. I'm not just here. I'm hosting. Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced down, face lighting up. The clip went viral, 2 million views and climbing. Sabrina raised an eyebrow. The one from the open house? Yeah. Somebody added subtitles and posted it on TikTok. It's got hashtags like bought the mansion and she thought she was the help. Sabrina chuckled. Of course it does. She wasn't surprised. In the days after the open house, her name had gone from whispered in industry circles to trending online. Not because she shouted, not because she fought, but because she stayed still long enough for their own words to embarrass them. And when she spoke, she closed the deal. 2 floors up, a crew of designers moved through the halls, taping blueprints to walls, laying out fabric swatches. Erica Wu, in her usual sharp black jumpsuit, was directing the chaos like a conductor. When she saw Sabrina walk in, she waved a swatch of deep emerald velvet in the air. I'm thinking green for the front parlor, she said. Power color. Money, without being tacky. I trust you, Sabrina said. Just keep the kitchen warm and the office brutal. Erica smirked. Done. They stood there a moment, surveying the space. It was hard to believe how quickly it had transformed. Not the structure. That would take time. But the energy. The intent. No longer a place built to impress. Now a place that would influence. Sabrina's phone rang. She pulled it out, saw the name. Riley Benson. She didn't answer. Instead, she tossed the phone onto a nearby marble counter, the call buzzing unanswered as she looked out across the estate. The same Riley who had once misdirected her toward the cleaning crew had sent 3 emails in the past week, one offering to co-list, one asking for a meeting, one attaching his resume. She hadn't replied to any of them. Downstairs, the sound of a new voice echoed through the front foyer. Maya leaned out over the banister. "She's here," she called out. Sabrina walked to the edge and looked down. A young black woman stood just inside the door, shoulders back, eyes sharp. She wore a gray blazer over a coral blouse, and her natural hair framed her face like a crown. She looked up when she spotted Sabrina and smiled. "Miss Parks," she said. "Thank you for the opportunity." Sabrina came down the steps slowly, one hand grazing the rail, the other resting casually in her pocket. "You came recommended," she said. "Let's see if the hype is real." The woman extended a hand. "I'm Aria Wells, newly licensed. Been following your work since I was in college." Sabrina took her hand and shook it. "Let's change the game together, Aria." Behind them, Maya watched quietly. A few months ago, she'd been in that exact spot, unsure, eager, hungry to prove herself. Now, she was drafting contracts, helping lead acquisitions, and being trained to take over a regional office by the end of the year. The doorbell rang again. Another candidate. Sabrina turned to Maya. "Let her in, and have Aria sit with you for 10 minutes before we talk. Let her observe how we move." "Yes, ma'am," Maya said, already moving. Sabrina turned back to the glass wall of the living room, overlooking the rolling hills and shimmering pool. Her reflection looked back at her, calm, centered, complete. She picked up her phone, finally answering a different message, one from her brother Trey. "Proud of you. Mom would be losing her mind right now. That kitchen alone? She'd be frying catfish before you finished unpacking." Sabrina smiled, typing a quick response. "He's already here. Everywhere." She looked down at the chessboard she'd kept from the last owners, the one missing its queen. She reached into her bag and pulled out a tiny piece wrapped in cloth. An antique queen, carved from black onyx, heavy and cold. She placed it on the board with a soft click. Now it was complete. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the staff had gone, Sabrina walked the halls barefoot again, the floors cool beneath her soles. She paused at a window and stared out at the lights from the distant city. She thought of the duplex, of her mother's aching hands, of her grandma's Sunday prayers, of the banks that told her no, of the agents who looked right through her. And then she thought of Maya, of Aria, of whoever came next. The house was hers now. But the movement? That belonged to all of them. She didn't just buy the mansion. She reclaimed the narrative, and in doing so, she built a kingdom from the same bricks they once threw at her. Not a bad day's work. Not bad at all.